Jude was slightly drunk and still laughing when he folded into the back seat. Zara slid in beside him, silk dress, phone in hand, the easy comfort of two people who had spent the evening being careless together. He pulled the door shut without looking. The car was warm. He didn't look at the driver. He never looked at the driver. He was mid-sentence, mid-laugh, already reaching for Zara's hand when the driver glanced into the rearview mirror and spoke. "Where to, sir?" The voice hit him before the face did. Click. All four doors locked at once. The engine opened up and the car surged forward, smooth, fast, swallowing the empty night road whole. No traffic, no resistance, just dark tarmac stretching ahead and the city blurring past the windows and Jude's hand frozen mid-reach, the laughter dead in his throat, staring at the mirror at the one face in the world he was never supposed to see here. She didn't turn around, both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, speedometer climbing. "Did you enjoy your night, sir?" Casual, warm, the voice of a woman making perfectly normal conversation with a passenger she had never met in her life. Jude couldn't speak. "The food good? That hotel does a lovely dinner, I hear." Still accelerating, still not turning around. The city lights were thinning now, the road opening up, and nobody on earth knew the three of them were in this car together. Zara turned slowly and looked at Jude. His face had lost every drop of color. She had never seen him look like that. Not once in 18 months. Not ever. "Jude," she whispered, "who is this?" Diane answered before he could. "I'm his wife, and we're going to have a little conversation. All three of us. Together." The alcohol should have slowed him, should have kept everything soft and manageable the way it had kept the whole evening soft and manageable, but the drunk burned off in one single second the moment he heard that voice. Not gradually, not in stages, just gone, like cold water from a height. Every nerve suddenly sharp and awake and screaming. Because he knew that voice before his brain had finished processing the words. He knew it the way you know something that has lived inside your daily life for 8 years. The particular rhythm of it, the way certain words sat in her mouth, the tone she used when she was being careful. He had heard that voice say good morning 10,000 times. He had heard it say good night. He had heard it say, "I love you" across a kitchen table and mean it completely. And now here it was on the other side of a locked door doing 60 on an empty road. He looked at the mirror properly for the first time, really looked, and even through the low light of the car interior, even with only her eyes visible above the seat, even with the drink still sitting warm in his blood, there was not a single cell in his body that didn't know exactly who was driving this car. The set of her shoulders, the way she held the wheel, both hands, 10 and 2, the way she always drove when she was thinking hard about something. The particular stillness of her. That was the thing that cut through everything else. That stillness. He had spent 8 years beside that stillness, and he had taken it apart piece by piece without ever once stopping to understand what it was worth. He understood now. Sitting locked in the back of her car with another woman beside him, he understood completely, and far too late. Jude had a system. Not lies, not betrayal, a system. 2 lives running in parallel, never touching. He was a senior architect at one of the city's most respected firms, the kind of man whose name appeared in magazine features. He wore success effortlessly, like it had always been his. People liked Jude immediately and trusted him shortly after. He had never once had to work hard at being believed. At home, there was Diane. Diane was the kind of woman who made everything around her more honest just by being in the room. She had a stillness about her, the kind of person who listened the way most people forgot to. He had spent 8 years beside her and had still somehow convinced himself she would never see what was right in front of her. Diane had started driving rideshare 3 evenings a week 2 years ago. Not for the money. Jude was always traveling, always away, always busy, and the apartment had started feeling like a waiting room. Driving gave her the city, the movement, the sense that she was choosing her own direction when everything else belonged to someone else's schedule. She loved the way the city thinned at night, the quiet control of it. She had noticed other things, too. The phone that always landed face down on the dinner table, the business trips that left no business cards behind, the way Jude laughed differently when he thought she wasn't listening, looser, lighter, like a man putting something down he carried everywhere else. She had lined these things up in her mind more than once. She had not yet let herself finish the thought, until tonight. Zara Menza was not what people assumed when they heard the word mistress. She was sharp and perceptive and genuinely kind, a woman who had met a charming man at a work event 18 months ago and made the catastrophic mistake of believing every word he said. She was 26, she was 5 months pregnant, and she believed, with the particular faith of someone who has been promised something enough times to stop questioning the timeline, that this baby was the thing that would finally make Jude act. He had been telling her for months he was working up to leaving Diane, that the timing had to be right, that he needed to do it carefully, for everyone's sake. Tonight, over dinner, he had said it again, hand over hers, eyes steady, and Zara had believed him again. In the car, nobody spoke. The speedometer held steady at 15 above the limit. Diane drove the way she drove everything, with complete, unhurried control, like she had planned this, like the road ahead was exactly where she intended to be. Zara sat rigid, one hand pressed flat against her stomach without thinking. Jude stared at the back of Diane's headrest and said nothing. The alcohol that had made everything soft and easy 1 hour ago was completely gone. He was sober in the way only terror makes you sober, sharp, cold, every nerve awake. He tried the door handle once, locked. He tried it again, still locked. Diane's eyes found him in the mirror and she said nothing. She didn't need to. The locked door said everything she needed to say right now. Jude. Zara's voice was low, careful. The voice of someone trying very hard to stay calm. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. He said nothing. Jude. Still nothing, because there was nothing to say. No angle, no exit, no version of his charm that worked when the person driving the car already knew everything, and the person sitting beside him was 5 months pregnant with his child, and both of them were locked inside a moving vehicle doing 60 on an empty road, and the only person in control of any of it was the woman he had been lying to for 2 years. Zara turned and looked at him fully for the first time since the doors locked. And what she saw on his face, the complete absence of any denial, answered every question she hadn't finished asking yet. You said you were leaving her. The words came out quiet. Not an accusation, something worse, a statement. The flat, terrible sound of a woman watching the last version of a story she had chosen to believe finally collapse in front of her. Jude opened his mouth, closed it. Diane's eyes moved briefly to the mirror, not at Jude, at Zara, and what she saw there stopped something cold in her chest, because Zara's face was not the face of a rival. It was the face of a woman who had also been handed a story and told it was a future, who had also believed, who was also, in her own way, sitting in the wreckage of something she had trusted completely. Diane recognized it the way you recognize your own reflection. How far along? Diane asked. Her voice was calm, no shaking, no edge, just a question asked the way a doctor asks, direct, necessary, already past the point of softening anything. Zara didn't answer immediately. Her hand was still on her stomach, her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set, and she was holding herself together with the particular dignity of someone who refuses to fall apart in front of an audience. 5 months, she said finally. The number sat in the car like a third passenger. 5 months. Diane did the arithmetic without meaning to, the way the mind does things you don't ask it to. 5 months back was a Tuesday in November. Jude had been in Edinburgh that week, a conference, he had said. She had cooked dinner anyway and left it in the oven and fallen asleep waiting. The road was completely empty now. No streetlights, no other headlights, just dark tarmac and the low, steady growl of the engine, and 3 people sitting inside a silence that had weight and texture and no exit. Jude leaned forward slowly. Diane, his voice came out too careful, too controlled. The voice of a man trying to sound reasonable when he has no ground left to stand on. Just pull over. Let's talk about this properly. You don't have to... I don't have to what? She said pleasantly. He stopped. Finish that sentence, she said. Same warmth, same warmth. I'm very interested in how it ends. He didn't finish it. There was no version of that sentence that didn't make everything worse, and some part of his brain even now was still trying to calculate the angle. There is no angle, Diane said quietly, as though she had heard him thinking. I want you to understand that. There is no version of tonight where you talk your way out. I have been driving this city for 2 years, 3 nights a week, every week. Do you know why? Jude said nothing. Because you were never home, she said, and I needed somewhere to go that felt like mine. And tonight, out of every night, out of every pickup, out of every hotel in this city, she exhaled once, slowly, you got in my car. The trees moved past the windows like dark water. Zara was very still. Jude sat back. The calculation had stopped. There was nothing left to calculate. I knew, Diane said. Not everything, not the details, but I knew the shape of it. The phone face down, the trips that never quite added up, the way you laughed differently when you thought I wasn't listening. She paused. I kept giving you the chance to tell me. I kept leaving the door open. Do you remember the night I asked if there was anything you wanted to talk about, and you said, Diane, you said nothing. Everything's fine. You're tired. Let's go to sleep. Silence. I lay there for 2 hours, she said. 2 hours! And I decided to believe you, because it was easier, because I loved you, because I didn't want to know. She paused. I know now. Zara spoke without planning to. He told me you were unhappy, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. He told me you had been distant for years, that the marriage had been over in everything but name, that he was staying for practical reasons and working up to leaving. She stopped, swallowed. He said that for 18 months. Every time I pushed, he said the timing wasn't right. And I... Her voice broke cleanly. She pressed her hand harder against her stomach. I believed him. I built everything around it. Diane was quiet for a moment. So did I, she said softly. 15 years ago. Different woman. Same words. The car was silent. Jude's head turned sharply. That's not... Don't, Diane said. One word. Quiet as a door closing. He stopped. Because she was right. Because 15 years ago, a different woman had sat across from him at a different table, and he had said the same things. The marriage is over in everything but name. I'm working up to leaving. The timing has to be right. And he had meant it just enough to be convincing and not enough to be true. He had told himself that was different, that this was different, that Zara was different. He had been telling himself variations of that story for so long he had stopped noticing it was a story. Diane had known. Of course she had known. She had always been the smartest person in every room he had ever shared with her. I'm not angry, Diane said, and the terrifying thing was that she meant it. There was no performance in her voice, no suppressed trembling, nothing suggesting she was holding something back. She was simply clear. I was. For about 30 seconds back at that hotel when I saw your face in my mirror, I felt everything. All of it. All at once. She paused. And then I just drove. And by the time we hit the first junction, it was already gone. Because angry means I still expected something from you. And I don't. The road ahead was long and straight and empty. I haven't expected anything from you in a long time, Jude. I just didn't know it yet. Zara wiped her face with the back of her hand. She had stopped trying to hold herself together. The tears were quiet, not dramatic, not breaking, just present, the way rain is present, unstoppable and honest. "What do I do?" she said, not to anyone in particular, just out loud. The question of a woman looking at the architecture of the last 18 months and seeing for the first time what it was actually built on. Diane was quiet for a moment. "You have the baby," she said simply. "You figure out who you are without him in the picture, and you stop waiting for a man who was never going to arrive." A beat. "I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but it's the only true thing I can give you tonight." Zara nodded slowly, just once, like something had settled. Jude tried once more. Because he was Jude. Because trying was the only thing he knew when a situation turned against him. Voice low. Careful. The voice he used when he needed to bring a room back. "Diane, I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know that. But we have 8 years. 8 real years. And I'm asking you to pull over and look at me and let me tell me about Edinburgh," she said. He went still. "The conference. 3rd week of November. You called me from the hotel room at 9 p.m., and I could hear the TV in the background, and you sounded tired, and I asked if you were eating properly." She paused. "Were you in a hotel room, Jude?" The silence answered before he could. He said nothing. Every specific detail she named, and she named 3 more after Edinburgh, quietly, without drama, the way someone reads from a list they have been keeping for a long time, landed with the weight of things that are simply, inarguably true. He had no counter, no reframe, no version of his voice that made any of it different. Zara sat beside him, saying nothing, staring at her hands, and with every detail Diane named, Zara felt another piece of the story she had been given quietly turn over and show its other side. The trips, he said, were work. The weekends, he said, were complicated. The reasons the timing was never right. All of it finding its shape. All of it finally making a different kind of sense. The car slowed, pulled to the side of the road. Diane put it in park with one quiet movement and sat for a moment with her hands still on the wheel. Then she turned around. She looked at Zara first, not with hatred, not with coldness, with something that took Zara completely off guard, something that looked, impossibly, like concern. Like the look of a woman who understood exactly what the person across from her was about to walk into and wanted to say something true before the door closed. "You are going to be fine," Diane said quietly. "Not tonight, not for a while, but you are going to be fine. And that child is going to be fine, because you are not him." Zara's chin trembled. She nodded once, and something in her eyes, some last desperate hope that Jude would contradict this, would say something, would be the man she had believed in, finally, quietly went out. Then Diane looked at Jude, and that was different. No warmth, no fury, no trembling lip, nothing that gave him anything to work with, just the look of a woman who had finished, who had made every decision that needed to be made somewhere in the last 40 minutes and had nothing left to negotiate. The look of a closed door, the lock clicking, the handle going cold. She reached down. The soft, mechanical sound of 4 doors unlocking filled the car like a full stop at the end of a very long sentence. Her voice, when it came, was almost gentle. "Get out of my car." Jude's mouth opened, one last time. The voice came out broken and small. "Diane, I'm sorry." "I know," she said. "Get out." Zara opened her door first. She stepped out onto the dark road without a word, one hand on her stomach. She didn't look back at Jude. She stood on the tarmac in her silk dress in the cold night air and breathed and looked at the distant city lights and said nothing because there was nothing left to say, and she knew it. Jude followed slowly, heavily, like a man stepping off the edge of something he had always known was coming, but had spent 2 years pretending was still far away. His feet hit the road. The door closed behind him. Diane faced forward, hands on the wheel. She pulled back onto the road in one smooth motion and did not look in the mirror. Not once, not ever. The tail lights disappeared around a bend, and then there was nothing. Just dark, just road, just wind and trees that didn't care about any of this. Jude stood exactly where he had stepped out. His phone read 11%. The nearest pin was 2.6 miles away on a road with no footpath and no streetlights. He looked at Diane's name at the top of his recent contacts, right where it always was, through every evening he had spent not coming home on time. He pressed call. It rang twice. She picked up and said nothing, just open air and the faint sound of the city moving past her window. His voice came out stripped of everything. No warmth, no strategy, just the raw, flat sound of a man who had run completely out of road. "I want a divorce." He said it because it was the only honest thing left, because she deserved to hear it as a statement and not a negotiation, because somewhere in the wreckage of the last hour, something in him had quietly, permanently stopped pretending. Silence on her end. The city moved past her window. She drove. Then her voice came through the phone, calm and clear and final as a line drawn across a page. "I'll have the papers ready." The call ended. No goodbye, no door left open even a crack. Behind him, on that dark road, Zara sat on the low grass at the roadside, one hand on her stomach, phone almost dead. The name she hadn't told anyone yet still saved in her notes. And somewhere across the city, a monitor beeped steadily above a hospital bed, and a nurse was writing something in a file that was about to change everything that came next. Diane drove home through the quiet city, streets nearly empty, traffic lights cycling through their colors from no one. She kept both hands on the wheel and her eyes on the road and did not turn the radio on. She parked outside the building at 11:43 and sat for one moment. One single, private moment, with her hands still on the wheel and the engine ticking as it cooled. Then she went inside. She filled the kettle. She sat at the kitchen table in her coat and waited for the water to boil because she needed something ordinary to hold on to, and that was the most ordinary thing she could find. The tea she made she held in both hands without drinking. She did not cry that night. Not because the pain wasn't there. It was there. Enormous and patient, waiting for privacy. But underneath the pain, something else was sitting. Something she hadn't felt in so long she had almost forgotten what it was. Stillness. Real stillness. The kind that comes when the thing you have been dreading finally arrives, and you survive the arrival and realize, with a quiet shock, that you are still entirely yourself on the other side of it. Every question she had carried for 2 years had an answer now. Every half-finished thought, every phone face down, every trip that felt slightly wrong in a way she couldn't name. It all had a shape now. And a shape, even a terrible one, was easier to carry than a shadow. She sat at her kitchen table in the silence of a home that was about to become only hers, and felt the first clean breath of a woman who had nothing left to be afraid of finding out. She was already home. Jude was still standing on a dark road 2.6 miles from the nearest light, and across the city in a hospital maternity ward neither of them knew about yet. A monitor beeped steadily above a bed where Zara lay with her phone dead on the mattress beside her, and her hand resting flat on her stomach, and her eyes open in the dark, staring at the ceiling. A nurse came in quietly and checked the readings and wrote something in a file and said, "Everything looks fine. Try to get some rest." Zara nodded. She did not sleep. She lay there in the blue-white quiet of that room and thought about the name she had saved. and decided, for the first time, that it no longer needed his approval to be real.